Welcome to the Society.
Before we descend into madness, please be advised that the following program contains topics and cases describing graphic violence, strong sexual content, explicit language, and elements that may not be suitable for some audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
(911) state your emergency.
152 Cedarbrook Road. My wife just shot me. Please.
Okay, where were you shot at?
My arm.
Okay. How old are you?
Bailey, stop! I'm 25. I'm an off-duty police officer. I'm locked in the basement. She's shooting through the door. Please help me.
Okay. Stay on the phone with me. I've got help coming.
She's going to turn the short and shot me through the door.
She shot you through the door?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm bleeding out all over the place.
Do you have something, a belt, a shirt, something that you can tie around that, like a tourniquet?
I don't.
Something. Do you have a shirt on? Do you have a pair of pants? Whatever you have, I need you to take it off and tie it tight. Right there, okay? Okay. Sir? Sir, can you hear me?
Painesville, Ohio. Dylan Hostowski, 27, was a committed police officer with the Gates Mills Police Department, where he had worked since 2014. Known for his dedication, he often went above and beyond in his duties. Colleagues described him as hardworking, reliable, and passionate about serving his community. Kaylee Hostowski, 29, was a stay-at-home mother who was deeply devoted to her family. Friends and neighbors frequently saw her playing with their 3-year-old son or taking him on walks. She was known for her caring nature and always putting her family first. The couple had been married for 2.5 years and lived in Painesville with their son and dog. On August 13th, 2018, the day began like any other for the Hostowski family. Dylan went to work, while Kaylee stayed at home with their son. Neighbors reported seeing Kaylee outside in the morning, noting nothing unusual. However, around 4:15 p.m., a shocking incident occurred. Dylan was shot twice in the left arm by Kaylee through a door. Despite his injuries, he managed to escape and called 911 from a spot across the street near Heritage Middle School. Painesville police responded quickly, found Dylan wounded, and transported him to Tri-Point Medical Center. He was later transferred to Metro Health Medical Center, where he underwent surgery and was reported in stable condition. When police tried to contact Kaylee inside the house, she refused to communicate, prompting the involvement of Lake County SWAT. Using a robot and drones, the SWAT team eventually found Kaylee upstairs, deceased from a single gunshot wound, which was consistent with suicide. Authorities confirmed that the gun used was not Dylan's service weapon, and there were no previous reports of domestic violence at the Hostowski home. The motive behind Kaylee's actions remains unclear, leaving friends and family in disbelief. Some speculated that she might have been struggling with undetected mental health issues. Suspicious circumstances around the incident have raised questions, such as the precision of the shots through the door and whether the shooting could have been self-inflicted, followed by Kaylee's death. Some have even suggested the possibility that Dylan might have shot himself and then killed Kaylee, though this remains a theory. Welcome to a world where darkness and mystery converge. Navigate the depths of horror and true crime and join a society beyond the ordinary, where buzzworthy topics, paranormal tales, and listener-submitted experiences blend into a realm of the unknown. You have crossed into a place where the unusual and the terrifying are just the beginning. My name is Ralph Anthony, and welcome to the Scream Society podcast. Hello, Screamers. Does it seem like every week gets more and more, how do I put this, outrageous, You have assassination attempts on former presidents, the nastiest people in Hollywood finally being brought to justice, and exploding pagers. I really hope everyone is hanging in there. Thank you for tuning in. I do want to bring up something that occurred. Did anyone else in California believe we were under attack on Thursday, September 19th? On that early morning, I had my window open. You know, the mornings are starting to feel more fresh. So I'm woken up by what sounds like a plane flying over, followed by one of the loudest booms I have ever heard in my entire life. And I promise you, I am not being dramatic. I thought either a plane had crashed in the neighborhood, or we're being bombed, or some war just kicked off. Like, when I tell you that the entire house was shaking, the entire house was shaking. Then, to make the whole situation more scary, the emergency siren started going off. And I'm talking about the apocalypse sirens. Take a listen to what one of my neighbors posted on a community forum. Turns out this is just a thunderstorm and lightning struck a pole, causing a fire. But think of the loudest thunder you've heard times 10. And maybe the volume of the thunder or vibration from how loud the sound was prompted the city to turn on these frightening alarms. I've just never experienced a storm so loud. Absolutely terrifying. Things like that get you thinking, you know? So like in the event that something horrible were to ever happen and you were woken up to loud booms and alarms, how would you react? Would you have a plan? Would it take you a moment to process everything? Scary times. Anywho, let's get into the show. We have a lot to talk about. Let's get on track here. It's time for explosive Sinister Subjects. So has anyone watched that new limited series, Chimp Crazy? It's from the creator of Tiger King, Eric Good, only this time he had to hire a proxy director to get in deep with this story, as these chimp people knew exactly who he was from Tiger King. And when I tell you, from the start to the end, this show is nuts. The show in the beginning follows multiple monkey owners, and there's even one, I don't know if the monkey was having a deficiency, I forgot, but it gets to the point where she even breastfeeds her monkey. She had her baby in one and the monkey on the other, feeding them both at the same time. It was just wild. But one of the main people that this show follows is the very entertaining and animated Tanya Haddix, who is a former nurse turned animal broker who took over the Missouri Primate Foundation in 2018. This place housed several chimps, including Tonka, a monkey with some serious Hollywood credits, starring in movies like Buddy with Alan Cumming, George of the Jungle, and even Babe, Pig in the City. Classics. Now, here's where things got a little wild, because after being ordered to hand over her chimps to an animal sanctuary, Tanya claimed that Tonka, the famous one, had passed away. She even had his ashes that she presented in court, and when she shows these ashes to the camera, they look like chocolate milk powder or a cake mix of some sort. And so the docuseries takes a turn when she admits on camera that it was all a lie after a virtual court hearing where she's crying hysterically, basically putting on this big show to prove that this chimp was deceased. The judge could not make a decision and ended the hearing. And that's the moment when Tanya reveals that Tonka was very much alive and hidden in her basement the entire time. For nearly a year, she deceived authorities. Eventually, the filmmakers behind the docuseries tipped off PETA, and thanks to their efforts, Tonka was rescued and taken to a sanctuary where he's now living his best life. But despite this happy ending for Tonka, viewers like myself were left somewhat shocked that Tanya didn't face any jail time for her actions. Well, now PETA is stepping up its fight after the series premiered. They sent this letter to the court asking the judge to reconsider perjury charges against Tanya, arguing that the docuseries provides undeniable proof that she lied, which in fact it did. If she's charged and convicted, she could be facing up to 5 years behind bars. Tanya has come forward and responded when she was asked about all of the backlash, and Tanya seemed more exhausted than anything. She said she's not surprised by PETA's persistence, but she's just tired and wishes people would leave her alone. But PETA's not gonna let up. They've made it very clear that they're not gonna rest until Tanya and anyone involved in her mess is held accountable. The show goes into deeper details in cases of people having chimps as pets, and more famously, the story of Travis the chimp is also on there. He is a chimp who tore the face off of his owner's friend, which I've covered on my now defunct first podcast. Just get a dog, people. Finally, Sean Diddy Combs has been arrested. There have been so many rumors and allegations of sexual assault, drugging, and other really sick things, not to mention that disgusting video of him physically assaulting and dragging then girlfriend Cassie Ventura back in 2018. Well, on Monday, September 16th, in a sex trafficking case involving allegations of forcing women and men into so-called freak-off parties and running this insane criminal enterprise centered on sexual misconduct, the 54-year-old rapper was arrested at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York City and has since been formally charged with sex trafficking and transporting individuals for prostitution. Then on Tuesday, September 17th, Combs pleaded not guilty to all of these charges. They always start off pleading not guilty, pretending to be innocent. Well, in an attempt to secure his release, he offered a $50 million bail, proposing both his own home and his mother's as collateral. However, the court denied his request, keeping him in custody as the case proceeds. If Combs is found guilty, he could face a sentence of more than 20 years in prison. Meanwhile, his attorney Mark Agnifilo has stated that Combs is currently undergoing treatment and therapy. I try to remain reasonable and fair, but people with money, and lots of it, tend to take on this role of feeling like they're almost invincible, above the law, like money can buy their way out of situations, or in this case, he can make people do whatever he wants. And there's also this level of narcissism that I get. So in therapy, for what? Anxiety? Remorse maybe? Guilt? The truth? Let's break it down. Details of Combs's, shall we say, wild lifestyle came to light in a new 3-count indictment. Like I said, we're talking marathon sex parties here, where it's been revealed that Combs was flying in sex workers from around the world. These events often escalated into drug-fueled, days-long affairs. Days is absolutely wild. Now, according to federal prosecutors, Combs was allegedly the man behind the curtain, arranging and orchestrating these parties, watching and masturbating the whole time. He would provide partygoers with drugs like ecstasy, ketamine, and GHB to keep the energy high. And here's where it gets even more jaw-dropping. After these freak-offs, as they're being called, both Combs and the participants would reportedly receive IV fluids to help them recover from all the physical strain and drug use. His employees, allegedly in on the act, were booking hotel rooms, loading them up with baby oil, lubricant, and extra sheets for these secretive gatherings. Oh, and if you thought that was all, authorities say they found over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant when searching his properties earlier this year. That's not all they discovered, though. 3 AR-15 rifles with defaced serial numbers were uncovered in his Miami bedroom closet. The rifles had been broken down into parts along with loaded magazines. This case even takes us back to a 2011 incident where Combs was allegedly involved in the gunpoint kidnapping of an individual, and on Tuesday, September 17th, further claims surfaced, suggesting that while male sex workers were paid for their participation in these freak-offs, the women, however, on the other hand, reportedly were not. Combs would beat them and threaten them, sometimes even with financial ruin if they didn't participate. Now, the indictment paints this very disturbing picture. Combs is described as the head of what they call a criminal enterprise. We're talking accusations of everything, like I said, sex trafficking and forced labor, to kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. And according to the indictment, he would lure women into his little world by making them believe he wanted a romantic relationship, but once they were in, he'd keep them dependent on him, paying their rent or buying them cars to ensure that they stayed trapped in this sick web. And he also promised some careers, then he would beat them and hold them captive until their injuries would heal. I'm hoping we could see possibly a harsher charge. More than 20 years. Can you imagine the amount of people he has harmed mentally? What they're going to have to live through? I don't know. I just think 20 years isn't enough time. I think he needs more than 20 years and financial loss. But that's just me. Now, there are reports of Combs being placed on suicide watch, and it's just all so fucked up. But we're going to close this one out for now. But don't worry, because this is one case that I will definitely be following closely. There's a video, I believe, from an in-home Ring camera of this 15-year-old girl who is walking around her house, and she eventually sneaks a gun into her mom's room and kills her. So going into more detail on this case, 15-year-old Carly Gregg, who's on trial right now, is accused of killing her mom and then shooting her stepdad in their home in Brandon, Mississippi. Now, this dates back to March, and the footage was apparently just released. And the video that was shown in court shows Carly, who looks like such a young kid. She looks so young. She is seen awkwardly shuffling around their house. You don't really see anything, but the audio is what is pretty unsettling here. You hear 3 shots followed by her mom screaming, and it turns out that her mother was shot 3 times and died of a gunshot wound to the face. And after that, Carly comes back into the kitchen like nothing had happened. More disturbingly, she then goes to the kitchen bar and calmly takes a seat, grabs her mom's phone. And the thing that really gets me is what she does next, because apparently she texted a friend to come over, telling them that there was this emergency. And when the friend showed up, Carly supposedly asked, "Have you ever seen a dead body? My mom is in there." She then went on to text her stepdad to lure him home, sending him a message that said, "When will you be home, honey?" And when he came back, she allegedly shot him in the shoulder, but he managed to get the gun away from her. Truly disturbing. Now, further investigations revealed that all of this allegedly boiled over after one of Carly's friends told her mom about her using marijuana. Her mom was furious and went through her room and found things like vape pens. And this friend who was worried about Carly had even told her mom about Carly having burner phones and being high all of the time, which her mom didn't know about. Then there's this testimony from a psychiatrist, Dr. Andrew Clark, who said Carly was having a mental health crisis the day of the shooting. He explained that she was going through serious mood swings, hearing voices, and disassociating, which only got worse with her medications. He said that when her mom found out about the marijuana, it was like a crisis for Carly because she cared so much about her mom's approval. Now, her stepdad also testified, calling her a sweet little girl, and said that she has no memory or recollection of the shooting. He said she didn't even seem like herself that entire day, and he doesn't believe that she even recognized him when it all went down. They still talk every day, and their relationship is apparently good. Carly's been charged with murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. She's going for an insanity defense after turning down a plea deal. If she's convicted, she's looking at a life in prison for the murder charge, plus 30 years to life for the other charges. This is really intense. We're gonna move on. I'm literally sweating from how intense these subjects are today. You don't hear about this kind of stuff every day. So there is this elderly couple from Kentucky, Fred and Sheila McCoy, who are bounty hunters and content creators. They were live streaming in the woods on Wednesday, September 18th, while they searched for a guy who was accused of shooting 5 people on I-75 in Laurel County. And as they were out there, they ended up stumbling across this dead body. Now, a few hours later, Kentucky State Police confirmed that the body was likely Joseph Couch, the 32-year-old suspect, the shooter. And apparently, authorities had been searching for him for days, looking through over 28,000 acres. So the McCoys said that they noticed vultures circling an area near where the shooting had happened on September 7th. The McCoys were live streaming the whole thing as they made their way deep into the woods, which the police described as pretty rough terrain. And as they got closer to the vultures, they started smelling something really foul. And about 30 minutes into the live stream, Fred is seen going down a small hill in the woods, and that's when he found the body. His wife Sheila was just behind him and was clearly shocked. You can hear her saying, "You found him, oh my Lanta." Need that on a shirt. The state troopers quickly told the McCoys not to take any pictures since it was now a crime scene, and the live stream cut off. Then a few minutes later, they started another stream to let their viewers know they had found Couch. And on the bright side, the McCoys will be getting a $25,000 reward for finding Couch. The body is being sent to Frankfurt on Thursday for positive identification, but they're pretty sure it's him. They also found a gun and some other items near the body, which makes the police even more confident it's Couch. The McCoys, true legends right there. We have to talk about Hayden Panettiere. This is someone most of us grew up watching, from Heroes, that cringy but iconic Bring It On sequel, and of course the Scream franchise. She has seen her share of struggles throughout the years. She was a victim of agonizing postpartum, went through a messy divorce, alcohol and opioid addiction, and was seen on video in a bar brawl, and things just seemed to have been falling apart for her. However, in 2023, with her casting in Scream 6 last year, it seemed like she was in a good place finally. She was celebrating being sober. But before the release of Scream 6, her brother, unfortunately, and very tragically, died from an enlarged heart during the press tour for Scream. What exactly do you think this kind of trauma can do to someone? Well, Hayden recently did an interview for People magazine that was released on Wednesday, September 8th, and take a listen and think about what you're hearing. In one cut, she's discussing the loss of her brother, and in the other, her long-distance relationship with her daughter, who lives in Europe with her father, Ukrainian boxer Vladimir Klitschko.
She's beautiful, and she came out just like me. I mean, talk about nature versus nurture. I mean, this little girl literally came out, not just her face like resembling mine, but she is my personality. She just is. I saw her in her school play once. It was more of like a Christmas special thing, and she was more concerned about directing the kid next to her in his steps than she was about what she was doing. It's like leaving this poor kid alone. Like, just do your stuff. And she's like, come on, man, like, run around. What's wrong with you? Going like this in front of everyone. I was like, that's mine. That's my kid.
Maybe she'll be a director.
Yes, maybe she'll be a director. Losing my little brother, there's nothing like, I mean, he was my only sibling and he was my younger sibling, and it was my job to protect him. And when I lost him, I felt like I lost half of my soul. I remember saying to somebody, and it hadn't even been a year, and I was like, don't ever expect me to get over the loss of him, because no matter how many years go by, he will always be beside me, and it will always be, I will always be heartbroken about it. I will never be able to get over it.
It's very sad. This is clearly someone who is hurting. She is someone who seems trapped. And what the fuck are we doing, People Magazine? She clearly sounds like she's either exhausted or perhaps under the influence. Regardless, this seems just so unprofessional on People's part. This should have been scrapped or maybe even rescheduled. The moment she sat down with the interviewer, they should have stopped it then and there. And this is why people say Hollywood is ran by a bunch of demons. Now, a representative for Hayden has come forward saying, speaking about her brother for the first time was very emotional for her, and it had been a long and exhausting day for her. She was not under the influence. I think putting out a statement trying to debunk the validity of what you and I heard, what thousands of others have witnessed, seems so evil. I really do believe that society and Hollywood thrive on mental health issues and addiction and brainwashing, all to make those in this machine easier to control. They want to push antipsychotics, Ozempic, Xanax, chemicals in the food, all this shit to control them, to make them dependent, all by preying on these vulnerabilities. And not even just celebrities, but to all of us. People Magazine needs to remove this interview, honestly. And I hope Hayden can find people in her circle who can help her get better and can help her focus on her health. Come back in the spotlight when she's ready. Let's move on. Do you have something to say about any of these subjects? Let me know at Scream Society Podcast on Instagram or beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Going to take a quick break, terrifying but true, plus very creepy listener submissions after this.
Are you uncultured? Well, you don't have to be with Uncultured Gaze podcast hosted by me, Foxy Jones. Uncultured Gaze is an interview-style podcast with the goal of featuring and telling the stories of queer artists all over the world. You can even catch the host of the Scream Society podcast, Ralph Anthony, along with artists from the Boulet Brothers Dragula, such as Disasterina, Frankie Doom, and Foxy Ajwe, Twitch streamers such as Deer and Passion Planets. I hope you tune in to Uncultured Gaze podcasts anywhere you listen to your podcasts, because at this point, if you're still uncultured, that's your choice. And I hope you follow our social media, Uncultured Gaze Pod on Instagram, and your fabulous host, Foxy Jones, at the official Foxy Jones, also on Instagram and TikTok. But for now, we're going to say goodbye.
Hey, I'm Britt.
And I'm Dylan.
And this is
Hellraisers.
Hellraisers is a podcast co-hosted by horror-loving siblings.
Join us as we break down and discuss horror movies, new, old, classic, and obscure. Should we talk about the movie that we're actually actively recording this podcast about?
Yeah, a little, yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of listeners have seen this movie too. It's not exactly unpopular.
I don't know if we've ever said it, but I feel like the best way to listen to this podcast is to watch the movie first and then listen to the podcast.
Yeah. You're right.
He just wants those beers and get back to the movies.
Find Hellraisers on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
When the unthinkable becomes reality, we find ourselves questioning everything, as some stories are too terrifying but true. When most people think of haunted dolls, Their minds conjure up eerie images from films like Child's Play or Annabelle. But it wasn't an iconic Hollywood horror doll or even a creepy old antique that haunted the Madonia family in Houston, Texas. Instead, it was a cheerful Disney frozen Elsa doll gifted for Christmas in 2013 that would soon gain infamy for its disturbing behavior. Initially, the doll functioned as expected. With the push of a button on its necklace, it would recite phrases from Frozen and sing the iconic Let It Go. For 2 years, the toy performed perfectly in English, but in 2015, something strange began to happen. It started alternating between Spanish and English, said Emily Madonia, the doll's owner. There wasn't any button to change languages, it just did it randomly. Even stranger, despite owning the doll for over 6 years, the family had never once changed its batteries, yet it continued to talk, often on its own, and even when it was turned off. By December 2019, the family had had enough. The doll, once beloved by their children, had become a source of unease. They decided to throw it out. However, just weeks later, they found it sitting inside a bench in their living room. The children swore they hadn't retrieved it, and Emily believed them. They wouldn't have gone digging through the trash outside to recover the unsettling toy. As if to underscore its eerie nature, the Elsa doll no longer sang the English version of Let It Go at all. Now, it only spoke Spanish. Determined to rid themselves of the toy for good, the family double-bagged it and placed it at the bottom of their trash, which was taken out the following garbage day. The family left for a trip, confident the ordeal was over. But when they returned, the doll was waiting for them, this time in their backyard. Desperate, the Madonias sent the doll to a friend in Minnesota, who promptly taped it to the front of his truck. According to Emily's last update, the doll has yet to make its way back to Houston. If you would like me to share an experience of yours, share something you find creepy or interesting, or simply want to ask me a question, head on over to beacons.ai/The Scream Society and click on the Society submissions link. Remember, everything remains anonymous. So back to episode 4 of The Scream Society, which I released September 10th. I talked about reality star Snooki and her alleged and very captivating encounter with aliens. Usually I create little TikTok videos and Instagram reels for segments from the podcast, hoping to catch more listeners, which, hi, Scream Society podcast on TikTok as well. Please give those videos a heart and a share. I'm like the variety show from hell that could. I'm trying to reach more because I want to share as many of your experiences as possible. So, as I was saying, Snooki and aliens. I made a video on that topic, which was a submission that inspired it. Anywho, it's picking up some traction on TikTok, and I just want to share what some users had to say so far about the whole topic. One user asked, is there a vid or a pic of her showing the hole? Now, Snooki claims she was abducted and was left with this strange hole on the back of her neck. However, when I did my investigating, I could not find anything, a video, an image, nothing. The only evidence is her on a podcast showing the host and the host reacting to it, but the audience doesn't see anything. If anyone out there knows of an image or something, send it my way, please. The rest of the responses to this video were short experiences that I find absolutely fascinating. And these are from the comment section, by the way. From Gen X Granny B, I'm curious about aliens, but I'm not ready for them. I had a dream about aliens and they were taking my blood. And when I woke up, I had red marks there. Another one says, I would always have dreams that they would take me. I had a car accident and I went to the hospital. They did an x-ray and they found a small metal piece behind my ear. And they asked me if I had had surgery on my head. So I called my mom and she said no. So they redid the x-ray because they thought it was a mistake. And the little metal plaque was there. Years later, I went to get an MRI CAT scan and I told them about the metal behind my ear, so they did another x-ray and it was no longer there. The dreams had also stopped. So it seems the trend of these alleged extraterrestrial beings tend to leave behind a sort of marking or a metal piece behind. But what's more terrifying to me is the impact that these experiences seem to have on people, which brings me to this next one. I received this next submission through the Society Submissions link, and it genuinely unsettled me to my core. Hi, Ralph. My name is Cassandra. I just started your podcast and enjoy it so far. I'm 37 now, but when I was a little girl, I had really unsettling things happen to me. When I was 12, I got my period. And I remember this time so well because it was a really hard time for my family. My dad had died and my mom started doing drugs. After a while, I moved with my aunt, and that's where I started my period, and that's when I started to have really bad dreams. In the dreams, I would always wake up strapped to a big metal square. I can't describe what was holding me down, but it didn't look like any material I had ever seen. There was tall beings that had no expression on their faces, like doll faces that didn't move, doing stuff to me. It didn't hurt, but I felt pressure all over my body. I wouldn't be able to scream or anything. They would always have my legs open, doing stuff to me. When I would wake up, I would always feel sick. I kept having the same dreams about twice a month, sometimes with my stomach cut open in them. I kept having these dreams until I was about 14. When my mom got clean, she moved in with us, and I would talk to her about it. She just told me to pray. I think most people want to believe, but I know it's hard because the only proof we have are these stories, which isn't a lot. I believe something was done to me. I was taken when I was a girl. The only thing I have is a weird mark or scar under my belly button area, even though I've never had surgery. My aunt said it's a birthmark, and so did my mom. Also, I can't have children. Me and my husband have never been able to figure out why. The doctor told us it's an unexplained fertility. Anyway, that's all that happened, but I always think about these dreams I used to have. Wow. Thank you for allowing me to share this experience, and my heart really goes out to you and your family. But I just want to highlight something that you said. When you said, I think most people want to believe, but I know it's hard because the only proof we have are these stories, which isn't a lot. And that's exactly true. We all want to believe, but there's always that small part of us that's skeptical. And I think that's what makes these types of stories and experiences so intriguing, and that's what keeps people coming back. It must be so difficult though, especially with stories like these, and probably why some don't even bother sharing, because that's all the evidence that they have, their anecdotal experience. It's a lot to take in, but that's why myself and other creators like me are here to talk about it. Thank you for tuning into the Scream Society podcast, hosted, written, produced, and edited by yours truly, Ralph Anthony. Help the society grow by subscribing on your favorite platform and leave a rating and review. I always strive for 5s. Have a horror or paranormal experience? Want me to answer your questions on the show? Submit to beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Scream Society Podcast. And until next time, I'll scare you on the next episode.